Well, do we want to go ahead and whip out your super awesome spreadsheet and we can nerd out about it together?
Yeah.
We'll push up our
Yeah.
glasses. And you want to see my spreadsheet?
The stories we've read capture our attention and immerse our minds in settings of all kinds to bring us the spectrum of feelings and deliver the tale of tales to our starving psyches.
Whether it's medieval-style fantasy with mages and knights,
Or hard sci-fi takes on the future of space colonization.
or thrillers set in your backyard, world building is the foundation that holds up the narrative, the glue that keeps it from unraveling as readers follow the journey you laid out for them, all to make the stories jump from the pages and burn themselves into our memories.
Welcome, weary writers, to Book Career in a Year's network of podcasts. This is Worlds Asunder, an insightful podcast on world and character building.
My co-host is the one and only David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's the H.Y. Gregor, but you can call her Haley or Sour Patch, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
We know. We have nearly a score of published novels and short stories between us, but who the hell are we to teach you about world building and character development? We get it, which is why we decided to call in some favors.
Each week, we pull from a list of the best and brightest authors, editors, and publishers to give tips and guidance on tackling the age-old questions and provide you with tools on how to accomplish world building like the pros. From environment to magic to characters, how do we strike a balance between what matters to our audiences and what matters to keep it all straight? Open up your ear holes
And your minds.
and get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder.
So, if you're ready,
Just knock and enter.
I told you it's awkward.
Oh, it even gives us a countdown.
Yeah, I need that.
I love it. All right, welcome back to Worlds Asunder, the only podcast on the internet that's giving you writer advice and a Pepsi to go with it.
I don't have a Pepsi.
This
What am I
week-
doing wrong?
Tagline.
It's different. It's different every time. I have scotch.
Where's my Pepsi?
Yeah.
I'll send it to you in the mail
Yes.
for the
All
next
right.
time we come visit.
She's going to hold you to that.
Pepsi
Dragon,
Zero,
Oh, I know.
please.
Dragon Con you
Pepsi
over.
Zero? Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, I'm going to see her before then. She's coming into Colorado.
Rude.
Yeah. Mic drop.
So we're done.
Okay,
Podcast
Anyway.
over.
fantastic tagline.
Yeah, that classic tagline. We're back for another week of mayhem and mischief and talking about world building. And this week, Haley has the distinct honor of interviewing our guest. Haley, take it away.
It is a distinct honor that you guys get to listen to me interview our guests because maybe something really exciting will happen.
Atta girl.
Yeah, we'll see. So you guys know that we're working really hard to bring in not just some of the greatest authors that we know, but a pretty large variety of genres and, experience levels for everyone. So Katie Cross, really it's kind of what doesn't she do? She's a little bit of a powerhouse. She has written, and I was making sure that the numbers were right because it looks like her bio and her website is not updated. We decided there's more than 50 books across multiple series in her Alkarra books, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. And then too many short stories to try to track down and count. We gave up. There's at least 20, lots.
There's lots. There's a lot.
Too many. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great problem to have. She also has written 10 romance novels, which I did not know until I Googled you. And then a couple of chitlick books is what she calls them. I don't know what that means.
Chiclet. It was a genre, and then Amazon got rid of us
Was that the
It's
official?
women's-
women's
No.
fiction. Gotcha.
because chiclet was offensive for some people, so they got rid of it.
Derogatory. All right. And then you now have 2 picture books, correct? The second one is getting ready to drop.
Kickstarter goes live on Friday.
Sweet. So by the time this comes out, you will have 2.
we'll have 2.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. So, and you narrate your own audiobooks, and you're known to your fans to write pretty quickly. You have a really unique fan engagement process. I'll ask you a little bit about that later. But for starters, I was wondering, tell us a little bit about Alkarra, how it started for you, a little bit of like the origin story, and your entry point into writing that world.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Like hanging out with you two is my favorite night ever. Talking about writing stuff, so I'm excited. So Alkarra is basically a medieval fantasy world that I made up exactly 10 years ago in 3 months or something like that. It started with my flagship novel, Miss Mabel's School for Girls, which is young adult fantasy. And it's like, I tell future readers, it's like a medieval Harry Potter, sort of magical school, haunted forest kind of feel. For the sake of this podcast, though, I started in the middle. So Alkarra is my fantasy world, and I decided we're gonna write in Alkarra. I had a producer in Hollywood, one of my producers, give me the advice to build wide, not tall. So instead of doing a lot of Bianca books, we want to like do a lot of different people in Alkarra. So that's what I did. So I started in the middle. So I did Bianca's first 4 books, and then my readers wanted more about some characters in Bianca, so I went back in time 100 years, and I did the Dragon Master trilogy. They wanted more Bianca again, so I went back forward to Bianca. And then they wanted a bunch of different stories that happened all over the timeline of Alkarra. So we went back 1,000 years. We went back 500 years. So I have this big, long timeline that I'll show you guys later. And now we do have a lot of short stories that readers have requested. We do have a lot of characters. We have a really big cast. We have a lot of people going on. And it is just so cool. So right now we're moving forward in the timeline through Bianca. And then I have a plan to move forward in the timeline with a character named Tommaso and Ava. So we have a lot happening in Alkarra all the time. It's so cool.
I can't even imagine how you keep all of it straight, right? Which is, what we're kind of hoping to help demystify here for a lot of people, because we talk about world Bibles, like keep track of everything, what color are your character's eyes, what date does this thing, significant event happen on? But I think what that actually looks like and knowing what information to include and, what is or isn't actually important is difficult to decide sometimes. How soon after writing Miss Mabel's School for Girls did you realize that you had created a monster, right? Like you have this Leviathan of a timeline that you have to keep track of. Did that happen like after the first couple of books, or was it longer than that? I say Leviathan in a very loving way. I think it's awesome. So.
No, yeah, it is totally a Leviathan. It's like this whole thing. It's like outside me now, right? Like it's so big that other people are taking Alkarra into the world. They're building shrines in their houses. I mean, I literally have readers sending in pictures of like the Leadham wood room in their house. So it was 7 years. Yeah. I was a hot mess for 7 years. And then when I decided I should probably start tracking a bunch of this, that's when I put together the system that I'll show you guys today. And we are still catching up. So if any of you are pre-Leviathan, then please learn from my mistakes, because it's a lot easier to do this at the beginning. I will say the spreadsheet and the process that I've started, I have just vitalized, I guess the word is. I have a second world outside of Alkarra that I've started writing in that some people have requested. And so right away, like story began, I had this new spreadsheet, the world building spreadsheet, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. So it's pretty simple process to start at the beginning, and it decreases the amount of time you're searching for information, and it really increases efficiency. So it's amazing, and it's super easy, and it's totally free.
I mean, you touched on it a little bit, right? But walk us through that first 7 years a little bit. How did you do it in the first 7 years? Was it just constantly going back and rereading your drafts, or did you have like something else that sort of was a system?
So it was not as difficult then, because I had the first 4 Bianca books, and then I went back in time, and it was like starting over. Although it was in Alkarra and the big structure is the same, these were 2 very different people in completely different settings. So I was a little bit starting from scratch. I remember going through the Bianca books and like mining for details about Sana and Isadora, who I went back in time for. And I would just mine for details, and I had like some editors that were kind of keeping eyes out for me and that kind of thing. So it wasn't as pertinent then, but once I went back to Bianca, but like I had readers emailing me every day for more Bianca. So when I decided to do more Bianca and I started writing book 5, I was like, oh no, there's so much I have forgotten and I don't remember. And it was like eye color, and it was like quirks of personality and how do they swear and that kind of stuff. So that's when I was like, I'm so inconsistent. And I messed up a lot. In the Dragon Master trilogy, where I went back in time, I got to the 3rd book and I reread the 1st and 2nd book, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many details that don't jive. Like I had to go back and like fix and reformat and repay and everything to like re-upload on Ingram Spark. And I was like, I'm not doing this again. So failures, right? Like so much failing and then picking myself back up and figuring a better way. Yeah. So yeah, it was messy. In a word, it was messy.
I mean, you've answered half my questions already, which are, what's the first big no and what would you do differently, right? When you're going back in time.
Yeah. So the first big no is don't think small. So at the time, I had no idea that Bianca would become this Leviathan. It's like such a great word. I had no idea. And my assumption was, well, I'm going to write Bianca and be done. But my readers are like, no. And I wish I had believed more in what this could have been so that I was ready. So what I would recommend to authors is like, assume you're the next Harry Potter and act accordingly.
And write that on your whiteboard above your desk. So it inspires.
Yeah, or whatever, right? Like Tolkien, or I don't know. Some people hate Harry Potter. I don't know. I just watched Harry Potter 5 with my kids, so it's like in my head. But like, assume from the beginning that you're going to be so big you get your own theme park. And how do you want to show up in the world from the very beginning? And that's exactly how I look at it this way. I can't tell you the opportunities that have opened for me and the professional impression I've made on people when I say, you want to see my spreadsheet? And it's like 4 numbers thick in columns, right? Because my timeline is so expansive. Or I had this company reach out to me because they're doing this really cool stuff with AI, and they wanted someone with like a big fan presence and readership, and they wanted to see if I could work with them. And I was like, well, like check out my spreadsheet, right? And they were so excited, they couldn't believe it. And it just makes it so easy to show up as the person that I want to be. And it's really just organization, right? And then I spend so much less time studying. I just get to be really efficient and write more, which is in the end game for me is more time in Alkarra being creative. And that's what like organization and efficiency allows me to do. So I get stupid nerdy about this. Saving time.
I was drafting last week and decided that I don't want AI in my writing at all. But what I want is for my word processor, I want Scrivener to have an AI that I can say, hey, what color is this character's eyes? Or like, when was the last time we saw, the dog? Where's the dog? Things that way it could just read my manuscript for me and just, there you go. I don't have to remember it. But that would make us lazy. And we wouldn't bother with the world building. We wouldn't bother with paying attention to the spreadsheet. And then it's not actually in your brain. And I think my writing personally would suffer because I wouldn't pay as close of attention, right?
Yeah, maybe. But like I have ADHD, so I'm not paying attention to that garbage anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so it's like
you have your spreadsheet.
Well, I have my spreadsheet, but also the process that I work with, I know that there's going to be a draft where I'm reading through the whole thing in like 24 to 36 hours. And so everything is fresh on my mind. And I know sequence to sequence to sequence to sequence. I'm going to be watching for stuff like, where's the dog? Who's standing up and all of a sudden is sitting down? Like, I trust my process enough. I know that I'll get there. So, yeah.
And so it's 50 books to get that? I mean, where does the threshold, how many do I have to write?
How honest can I be here?
Please. Yeah.
That has absolutely nothing to do with the number of books. Has everything to do with how willing I was to tackle mindset issues. So it took me a lot of failing to get to the point where I said, I'm at rock bottom. Like, where I don't know how to fix this. How do I get up from here? And realize, I'm not opening myself to improvement. I have mindset issues. I'm afraid, and I'm making decisions from fear. And once I turned that mindset issue around and I started trying to learn and look outside the box of fear that I built and control, that's when I started realizing this isn't as scary as I thought. And this can go faster than I was telling myself because I was afraid of success. Right. So you could have 4 books out and be doing what I do if you are faster at mindset issues than I was. Like if you're not making decisions out of fear and you're coming from a place of acceptance and humility. I think honestly, to me, that was the game changer. When I started looking at my mindset issues instead of my fears, that's when everything changed.
And for our audience a little bit, thank you, first of all, Katie, for sharing that with everybody, right? Yeah. Like that's a really, really good tidbit because a lot of us will have, something holding us back a little bit. Very few of us walk into this and don't have something that's kind of keeping us from being better. But knowing you now, right? Because we haven't known each other that long, but knowing you now, you're a very outgoing person. You're very confident. You're very good at what you do. Like, I love watching you work. I love listening to you talk about writing. So it is interesting for me to kind of hear a little bit of that backstory, just from you as a writer in general. And I think that'll help, help some of our audience members who might be afraid of the giant world building aspects of it, keeping track of all the things. It's like you have to kind of get over those personal hurdles as well as get over the professional ones.
Well, and when it comes to world building, the real danger for world building is to never write, because you're having so much fun world building, or you're hiding in the world building.
Yes.
Please smile. Raise your hand if this applies.
We talk about, the world builder syndrome, I think is what Clark Ronson called it, because it's such an easy trap to fall into. And more so probably for, spec fic authors, right? I think probably for stuff that's your chick lit or, urban settings, that kind of thing, maybe not as much. But there still can be plenty of things like details to get mired down in, regardless of genre.
Well, and really where it comes in here with world building is either control, perfectionism, or fear. So we're trying to, we're afraid of being successful, or we're afraid of failing. So you can't be too successful and have it change you, or you can't fail if you never actually write the damn book, right? Sorry, can we swear?
Now we can.
Yeah.
Okay. If you never write the book, you don't have to face any of those pain, right? But also the fear of perfection, which is really just a fear of failure. And then perfectionism also is like control, right? So we're so afraid of the book being perfect that we feel like we have to have the map. We have to have the history. We have to know what great lord died 1,000 years ago that they're now taking as a curse word these days. So it really matters to the reader, when actually you're really you're building an iceberg and the Titanic's already down, man. Like, it's not, we're hiding in the details because it helps us allay those fears that we're holding on to. But we're still getting that creative juice that we love, because we're in our own fantasy world and it feels so good and we love the creative, but we're just hiding. And eventually we start to recognize oh, there's something wrong with this story, but really it's not the story. It's that you're hiding from it.
Slight non sequitur. Something that you said, though, knowing the name of this god or whoever it was, the great lord that died, and we're taking his name in vain now. For your particular style of writing, your universe, that might actually be really important to you, because you might have someone say, hey, this is super cool, write me this origin story. And then you have to be like, oh, crap, that was a sentence that I didn't pay any attention to, and now I have to write a novel, or, I'm super interested in this. Do you keep track of tiny little nuggets like that as well? Or do you wait for them to pop up and spark back after you've published the books?
So I've done this several times. I'll put a throwaway historical fact that's a line in a book, and then I do it to see what happens. Who's going to pick up on it, right? And what are they going to say? So I have this character named Vittoria, and there's Vittoria Day in the Eastern Kingdom of my world, the Eastern Network of my world. And all I ever say in the Dragon Master trilogy is that it's Vittoria Day, and we're celebrating the first high priestess who was the poorest witch in the land and rose to high priestess, right? It's like a Cinderella story. It's like the Alkarra and Cinderella story. That's it. That's all I ever said. And I was like, what's going to happen? And of course, the readers were like, I want to know more about Vittoria. I want Vittoria's story. And I was like, okay, because you have one line. So you can do whatever the hell you want. You're not tied into it. But again, we get to this place of fear. I can't keep track of those details. I can't fill this need. I can't write this book in this world when I don't even know what's happening in this book. We start to discount what we can do, when really you've just thrown a line out there and you can do whatever you want with it. I've also done this with a character named Esmelda. I have, I don't know, like we said, over 50 titles. I like math, right? So I have over 50 titles, and Esmelda is probably present in 25 of them in some way with some fact or form of fiction. So I have said things about Esmelda in probably 25 books. And at some point, I'm going to have to do the Mortal Wars trilogy, which is Esmelda's story. I've already started plotting it. And there's so many details I've already decided, right? And we start to feel hemmed in. I can't keep track of all the details. I can't do this. But it's yeah, you can. Because even those 25 details are just 25 details against a whole world. So what I do is you can do this yourself, or I have my VA do it. I just say to Samantha, go through all of these books, because she has all my PDFs. And I say, these are the keywords I want you to search, and copy and paste any text with these keywords into this Google document. And then just have it organized in this order so I can look at the timeline. And then I just go through and I look at every single thing I've ever said about Esmelda. And then I already have a sort of structure to work with, right? And it's not that bad. So people panic about this a lot, like this whole idea, like, if I say it now, then it's established canon. Yeah, maybe. But maybe, like, it's fantasy, right? So you could probably riff it off of anything. Like, you could probably, like, oh, that Dark Lord was actually a legend. Like, I don't know. Like, you can, yeah. So we feel like it's out of our control at that point, which is a lie. Like, all of this we can say no to. All of this is in our control, and it's actually always okay. The other thing is, no one's going to die, right? Like, I say this to my team all the time.
Real.
Like, yeah, if we miss this deadline, like, it's books, no one's going to die. Like, it's okay. Like, I have a dog barking in chapter 11 of one of my audiobooks, and my team just was like, hey, I heard a dog barking. And I was like, that's kind of funny. Like, it's kind of funny. And so I was like, okay, I'll get it fixed eventually. It's already there. Like, whatever, I'll get it fixed. Eventually I'll get it fixed. Or, like, we published a book that on the outside of the cover said book 9, and it was book 10. And, like, all these readers were like, I got book 9. I'm like, no, it's actually book 10. We just forgot to change it. And I think it's hilarious. Right? It's the same with world building. Like, it's going to be fine.
And that's like a good kind of way to approach it too, right? Is like, one, yeah, everything will work out. But two, one of the things you brought up that I really liked, and it's something that I really enjoyed. Michael J. Sullivan did a series, the Ryria Chronicles and the Ryria, I can't remember the other one, Revelations maybe.
That's another fairly big series too.
Yeah, and then he went back, and some of his throwaway one-liners, he was like, oh, I don't like what this did to my story, so now you're going to find out that it was actually a falsehood that got spread after the real story, right? Yeah. And so it's a really cool way, it's a cool device, like you said, to throw that in, but you don't have to build it out at that point. Build it out. And I also, I made kind of a mental note. You go fishing for what your readers will buy next. Right? And that is amazing. That is an amazing way to build out your world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why there's so many short stories, right? Is because I have something called the Reader Request Series, and I have a form on Google, and about every 6 months we share it, and people can request any story that they want. And it's 10,000 words or less. It can be a scene from a different point of view. It can be a backstory. It can be a love story. Typically what I end up doing is I weave plots, like subplots, into the novels that I sort of resolve, but they're going to want to actually see how it resolves in a separate short story. And then I just offer the short story for like $2.99 or something. And they always buy, right? They always buy.
Well, and you have an amazing
some more than
community.
Others.
You know,
I do.
And you work
have
really
amazing
hard
readers.
to foster that and to like get to know your readers, and some of your stories are amazing.
But this is why.
Yeah.
Like, this is why. It's because I have this world that they want to go to, and then I write the books that they want in that world. And so we build out the world in the direction the readers are asking. And I'm in Alkarra, so sure, like, I'll do anything, right? I was talking to a producer with a production company, and he was like trying to get a feel for me. And he was like, so when does Alkarra stop? And I was like, why would Alkarra stop? And he's like, we kind of like looked at each other a little awkwardly, and he was like, you're just going to keep writing in Alkarra? And I was like, well, they're going to keep buying. Like, I'm happy there. You don't see why I'm like, I don't get what we're talking about here. And he was like, you have like over 50 titles. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I probably get like hundreds more in me, right? So he was like, I was like, they're still buying. I have this world that I've built that I love. So I don't see why we'd have to ever leave it completely. Of course, I have projects going outside it because it's good to diversify, but I don't have to leave Alkarra. It's so easy to be in there. I built it. Might as well use it, right?
It makes me think a little bit too that, like, I love that you are joining your readers on the escapism of it, the adventure, right? And, you know, not only are you writing it, but you're also enjoying it. And that's one of the really cool things about world building, is that when you find something you really enjoy, it makes all of that so much easier. And so that's almost kind of a counter tip where it's like, hey, if you're not enjoying this world anymore, right, start building a new one.
It's obvious. It's like, people pick up on that. So
for sure.
Although
when you're not excited, your readers aren't going to be excited. They'll know.
For me, I feel the quintessential example of that is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because it's pretty well known that Douglas Adams, by the time he was done with that, was done with that. Like, there's all kinds of stuff when you pull from his journal entries. He was not interested in writing about Ford Prefect or anyone else anymore. And as much as I love the series, the first installation of that is by far the strongest, because you can tell by the end he was like, I don't care, like, whatever. Because there were other things he wanted to be working on.
Yeah, you can tell. It bleeds through, like, when you're not excited. And also, like, who wants to write when you're not excited about the content? Like, already, writing can be kind of boring, right? You're, like, editing out verbs, changing passive to active. Like, sometimes it is a drudge. Like, even I love writing. Like, I am so excited every day to wake up and write. And I actively find ways to write more, because I sometimes write 6 to 8 hours a day, right? I love it. But even sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like not the most exciting thing on the planet, right? Like, you kind of have to get through it. And if you already don't love what you're doing, I can't imagine getting through the doldrums of writing.
Doldrums is another good word. It's like you're a writer.
It's almost like she's a writer or something. Yeah. She uses words.
We do use words. Not always appropriately, but
the amount of time that I spend on dictionary.com, it's embarrassing.
You should try Word Hippo.
Word Hippo? Is that better or different?
Yeah, I just have, you guys will see when I share my spreadsheet, I just always have a Word Hippo tab open. And because it's like synonyms, antonyms, you can see it used. There's like the definition. There's like all these things for any word. So I'm just constantly putting words in Word Hippo.
So it's faster than hitting all of them separately. Noted. Okay. Well, do we want to go ahead and whip out your super awesome spreadsheet and we can nerd out about it together? Yeah. We'll push up our glasses. You want to see my spreadsheet?
Sure. Okay.
I do.
Can you guys see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here is the ginormous world building spreadsheet. I don't know, how many columns are we at right now?
A bajillion.
Yeah, we're only at 3. We're not at 4. We're in the B's, right? So we still have
letters.
Yeah,
I didn't even know you could create a spreadsheet that big and still not crash.
You can't.
Euphemisms in there somewhere that we should.
Well, like, you can't open it without like being online. It's like, no, like, we can't, this is not available.
So this is a Google. Oh, okay. It is.
Yeah, it's a Google sheet. Okay.
Yeah, because then I can access it from wherever and I don't ever worry about it going away. So I'm super excited to see by the end of my career how many columns we have. I'm shooting for like 9. Okay, so for my brain, this totally makes sense, right? Some people, this won't work for their brain, but just in general, this is the structure that I have. Every column is right here. If you get to the actual book, every column is a scene. So we have chapter 1, it's under Ray's point of view. Chapter 2 is under Ren's. This is how old they are with that scene. This is sometimes not that applicable when I have a whole novel occurring over 3 months. They probably don't change age unless they do. But in this book, it spans 20 years. So it's really important for me to be able to look at a chapter that moves 5 years ahead and see how old everybody is. And then this is the actual book, because I have a lot of books. And so it's not, like, books cross. So let me show you right. Now I got to find it. So this darker purple is a short story that occurs within this novel. So that's why I sometimes have to separate out books so you can see. Anyway, so this is basically just my timeline. So I have like a 1 to 2 sentence thing saying what happens in the scene. I have all the characters, and then I have the time passed. So this is day 1. This is day 2. In Alkarra, time is reckoned by seasons. So there's 12 months. It's the same calendar we have, but it goes by seasons. So there's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd month of winter. Then there's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th week of the 1st month of winter. And then there's like 30 days, right? So I track time by 1F is the 1st month of fall, 2nd week, 3rd day. And that's how they track time in Alkarra. So then on the spreadsheet, I track it then, and I track the seasons. So you can see like this is 2 months apart, 3rd fall to 2nd winter. we're still in the third winter, and then we go all the way to first spring. Well, I guess that's just like a month. Anyway, so that's how I track my timeline. And then up here, anything in this light blue color is like a major event for the world. So a character is born, a character dies. So these should actually all be light blue. You can see it's like Ramsey's pregnancy starts in the year 115. I have actual birth date for Vargas because later I have to calculate his birthday. So you can see that kind of thing. If someone dies, if a specific letter is sent, that kind of thing. And then this right here is information specific to my plot. I had to track like how many rooms were in this library, how many books were in the library, and how many floors were in the library, or grimoires. So I would do that here. So I knew that I could scan any time and say, oh yeah, in year 121, the library had grown to 45 rooms. And in 4 years, it grew by 50 or 60 or whatever. So that's like the basic layout for timeline. So as I'm writing a book, and I'm going through every single scene in my second draft, which is the draft where I pull everything together. The first draft, I don't even touch the spreadsheet unless I'm putting a new character in. But the second draft is when I'm pulling all the messy ends together. That's when I put the spreadsheet together. And then in the third draft, I'll tweak the spreadsheet as details comes in. I also have, this is my timeline key. This has not been updated. I'm missing, like probably about 15 books are missing on here. And then we just have like a key, like, so we know what book it is if we need to, or how many times we've used a color, but we have to like repeat colors now. And this is my character spreadsheet. So this one, I do it alphabetically by first name. The character spreadsheet has just 2 columns, but we're at J, so we'll get there. And not all characters have been entered. This is just the characters from like the last 2 or 3 years. And then what I do is I say what book, it's so big I can't even swipe over. I have right here what book they're mentioned, their age when they're mentioned, their birth season, birthplace, occupation, parents, appearance, and then things to know. And sometimes I thought I would track personality, but I really don't. I pretty much do everything right here in these boxes, so I can just look at it right away. So you can see right here, like Agatha in Sister Witch's book 5 was 47. She had an apron that was clean, a crimson and gray uniform, salt and pepper hair. That's like what I put. This one, very tired, uses transformative magic daily. That's something to know. So that at any time I can go back and be like, oh yeah, like what was Alexi's father's name? And then I can find like his parents. He was Alexander, whatever. So you can just see like a bunch of characters. I probably have 100 characters not entered into here, honestly, because there are still books that we haven't entered into the timeline. And then my world is organized by covens. So there's like the Eastern Coven, there's the Bicker's Mill Coven, the Tate Coven. So in specific books, like the Great Library of Berk, this was like how that Great Library of Berk was organized. Here are some network schools that are mentioned. This is the leadership for the Central Network in the Sister Witches series. So the high priest is Charlie, and then Griffin, and then Bradley, and the high priestess was Felicity, and then Marin. So if at any time I need to go back and say, wait, who is high priest in this book? Then I could come back and just look at the leadership. This is another book, Mildred's Resistance. This is the Network series. These are like people that I've mentioned. The Brotherhood is like a spy organization. This is where any note I make about currency I put over here just in case I need to remember how much did they buy soap for, right? Like if they bought soap for like a pentacle and then it was 10 pentacles, that wouldn't really make sense. So I try to keep track of the currency. And then these are my dragons. Same kind of thing with characters, only they're dragons. And then I have, this was the Great Library of Berk.
This is so cool.
Different gods and demigods, and then different languages, where they're spoken, where they're mentioned. I probably have about 10 more languages we haven't updated here. Different magic systems and their names. So this is the magic system, the goddess of origin, if there's a grimoire that's known, and then just little like what that magic system provides. In Alkarra, basically magic is imparted through grimoires. The goddesses like organize magic into books, and then witches get these grimoires and learn the magic from it. And so I have eternal opportunities for magic systems because there's just another grimoire, right? So I try to keep track of the magic systems we have. And then anyway, just places. And I had a 10-book series that covered 3 characters that I had to braid through. And so I kind of started it this way to make sure I was keeping track of everything. So that's really like, talk about a Leviathan, right? Like that's
a Hydra, my friend.
Yeah, that's like, right? So big. I even had a member of my team, Karen, I was paying her to go back through the books and update the timeline and go through everything. Like for all the Bianca books aren't even in there. Bianca's like my flagship. Like she's in Hollywood. Like everyone knows me for Bianca, but all of her books aren't even on my timeline. Right? Like at least some of them are. So we're still trying to catch it up, but it is the game changer for writing books in a consistent way that fosters trust between the reader and the author, because I have the same information for book to book.
You just finished another episode of Worlds Asunder, this time with Katie Cross, part 1. We hope you enjoyed nerding out on spreadsheets, because Katie's got some more great info for you when she comes back next week. We'd like to thank you for stopping by and pardon us as we try and figure out how best to upload videos, as our podcast platform doesn't allow us to upload them so smoothly. So you'll find both audio and video versions on almost everything. As always, you can follow our authors by checking the links in the show notes, and you can find where you can find us next as well. Tune in next week when we bring you part 2 of The One with Chaos. Katie Cross. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to Book Career Network podcasts. And thank you again for helping us tear the world asunder. We'll see you next week.